You ever have a moment that completely shatters whatever illusion you had left about your family? Because mine came crashing down in the worst way possible, and it all started with a slammed door, a duffel bag, and a pathetic $100 to my name. Picture this. It's a sticky hot afternoon in Cedar Hill, Texas. I'm standing in the middle of the living room, a room I had practically kept alive for years. I'm talking about unclogging busted sinks, paying for the Wi-Fi when no one else bothered, covering the electric bills so my little brother could keep playing Fortnite all night. You get the idea? And right there, standing in front of me, is my mom, her face red and shaking with fury, but her eyes? Stone cold. She points to the door like I'm some kind of stray dog. You're a selfish leech, Luke. Get out. And don't come back. No warning. No conversation. Just boom, you're out. And my dad? Sitting in his crusty old recliner like always, staring at the floor, pretending the whole thing wasn't even happening. My sister, Megan, leaned against the hallway wall with a smug little smirk that made my blood boil. And my younger brother, Tyler? He muttered under his breath. Good riddance. Like I was the problem. Like I had brought this on myself. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything or make some dramatic last stand. I just turned, walked into my room, and started packing. A couple pairs of jeans. A few threadbare t-shirts. My old work boots. And the hoodie I basically lived in, still stained with oil from pulling double shifts at the auto shop. I didn't even have a real suitcase, just an ancient army duffel bag I'd picked up at a thrift store for $5. When I stepped out the front door, nobody tried to stop me. Nobody said goodbye. The door slammed behind me, the click of the lock sounding like a final sentence I didn't get a chance to finish writing. I tossed my duffel bag into the back seat of my battered 2006 Civic, slid behind the wheel, and just sat there for a minute. It was hot. The seats burned my skin through my jeans. The air was thick and heavy, the way it gets before a summer thunderstorm. And in that moment, all I had in the world was my car, which needed an oil change it wasn't going to get anytime soon. A half tank of gas. $100 in my checking account. And a duffel bag of clothes that barely smelled clean. That night, I parked behind the garage where I worked. It wasn't safe. It wasn't smart. But I didn't have anywhere else to go. The seat didn't recline properly. I couldn't stretch out. Mosquitoes buzzed around my ears. And even though it was so hot my shirt stuck to my back, I couldn't bring myself to crack the windows for fear someone might try to break in. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, that moment in the living room replayed in my head. Mom's cold voice. Dad's silence. Megan's smirk. Tyler's muttered, "Good riddance." It hit me like a punch to the gut every time. I was alone. Really alone. For the first time in my life, I realized no one was coming to save me. But if I wanted to survive, if I wanted to live, I was going to have to save myself. And that's exactly what I decided to do. Waking up in the back seat of a car that smelled like stale fast food and old sweat isn't exactly what I'd call a dream come true. But when you're 20, broke, and freshly disowned by your family, it's the kind of luxury you get used to real fast. I stretched my legs as much as I could, trying to relieve the cramps in my lower back. The sun hadn't even risen fully yet, but the car was already heating up like a sauna. I wiped my forehead on my hoodie sleeve, blinked at the cracked windshield, and just sat there. Still no texts. No calls. No one wondering if I was okay. I was the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. It was this deep, grinding exhaustion, physical, mental, emotional. Like my soul had run a marathon barefoot. A little after 7, I dragged myself out of the car, splashed water on my face in the garage sink, and clocked in early like I always did. That's when Mr. Ray, my coworker, late 50s, wears the same flannel shirt every other day, drinks more gas station coffee than any human should, noticed something was off. He looked me up and down, squinted. "You sleep in your car last night?" I didn't answer, just sort of gave a half nod. He sighed and grumbled something about damn families, under his breath, then said, "My couch ain't pretty, but it's better than your back seat. Come by tonight." Buddy don't bite. Buddy, for the record, is a drooling old Labrador who sleeps like a chainsaw. That night, I crashed on Mr. Ray's couch. The springs creaked, the cushions were lopsided, and the whole apartment smelled like a mix of dog food and black coffee, but it was warm. It was safe. And most importantly, it wasn't my car. I knew I couldn't stay there forever, though. Ray never said a word about it, but I didn't want to be another burden. I started combing through bulletin boards around town, checking Craigslist on the shop's dusty old computer, and asking around at every gas station and laundromat. Problem? Everywhere wanted first and last month's rent. Security deposit. Proof of income. I had none of that. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and even that was a stretch. I couldn't even afford the $3 tacos from the food truck behind the garage anymore. But then I found it. A listing that looked almost too terrible to be real. Studio. Utilities included. No pets. Cash preferred. Must meet landlord in person. $275 per month. I called. Met a guy named Carl in front of this dilapidated building on the far edge of town. He looked like someone who'd seen too much. Thick glasses, heavy smoker voice, stained overalls, and he barely even looked me in the eye. Just said, "You work at that garage near the overpass, right? I seen your car there." I nodded. He grunted, held out his hand. "You pay on time?" "Always." "Then it's yours." No lease. No paperwork. Just a key in my palm and a nod toward the peeling door. The place was rough. Flickering lights. Walls that looked like they'd been painted during the Nixon administration. Carpet older than me. But it was mine. I didn't have furniture. I didn't even have a blanket. That first night, I lay on the floor with my hoodie as a pillow and my duffel bag as a footrest. I stared at the cracked ceiling until sleep eventually dragged me under. But weirdly, I wasn't sad. Not entirely. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. No one yelling from the next room. No one calling me lazy for not doing enough. I had four walls, a door that locked, and the faintest flicker of hope. I was broke. I was alone. But I was free. And I was about to find out just how much that freedom would cost. You know that feeling when things finally start to stabilize, and then out of nowhere, the rug gets yanked out from under you? That was me. 2 months into my new life. I had my sad little studio, still mostly empty except for a $20 mattress I dragged up the stairs alone, and a dented lamp that made this weird buzzing noise whenever the wind blew. My meals? 90% ramen. My entertainment? The sound of my neighbor yelling at his cat and the occasional stolen Wi-Fi signal when I could catch it from the bakery across the street. But still, it was mine. My space. My quiet. My rules. I'd started saving what I could, maybe $20 here, $15 there, and dreaming crazy dreams like maybe buying a second-hand couch someday, or getting plates that weren't plastic. And then one Sunday morning, while sipping instant coffee that tasted like scorched regret, I opened my bank app. I expected to see maybe $83 or so. Instead, $4.19. 4 freaking dollars. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might hurl. I scrolled. And that's when I saw it. A transaction labeled Auto Loan, D.H. Harper Credit Union, $180. I blinked. Scrolled again. Same charge. The month before. And the one before that. 3 months. $180 a pop. I tapped for details. And suddenly, everything clicked into place like a punch to the face. It was my dad's truck. Back when I was 17, he'd guilt me into co-signing for it. He didn't qualify. Bad credit. Too many missed payments. You know the drill. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "It's just temporary, Luke. Just until I get back on my feet." He never did. And apparently, I never stopped paying. All this time, while I was skipping meals, choosing between gas and groceries, sleeping on a floor, I had been footing the bill for his pride and joy. The same truck he waxed every Sunday. The same one he loved more than his own kids, probably. And he hadn't said a single word? Not a thank you? Not a heads up? Not even a hey, you're still paying for my stuff while living off peanuts. It wasn't just about the money. It was the betrayal. He knew I was out on my own. He knew I got kicked out. But still, he let me bleed. That was the moment something in me broke. Or maybe it clicked. Like a locked door swinging open. I grabbed my keys, threw on my hoodie, and marched to the bank before I could second-guess myself. The teller, an older woman named Doris, gave me a patient smile as I handed over my ID. How can I help you, sweetie? I need to cancel an automatic payment. All right. To where? D.H. Harper Auto Loan. She glanced at the screen, blinked and said, You sure about that? This one's been going for a while. I met her eyes and nodded. I'm sure. I'm done paying for things that aren't mine. She gave me a long look, then a quiet little nod of respect, and clicked a few keys. All done. Walking back to my studio, the sky was a moody gray, like it might storm. But weirdly, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Like I had just dropped a backpack full of bricks. Back in my apartment, I rearranged my one shelf for the 10th time, then sat by the window, staring at the cheap mountain poster I'd taped to the wall. That poster had peaks, strong, solid, unshakable. I wanted to be like that. And just when I was finally finding peace, the phone rang. Dad. The first time he'd called in months. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I picked up. Before I could even say hello, he exploded. Luke, where's my truck? They took it. It's gone. What did you do? I didn't flinch. Didn't raise my voice. Just said, I stopped paying for it. The silence on the other end? Man, it was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. For a moment after I said those words, I stopped paying for it. The world just froze. I could hear my dad breathing on the other end of the line, ragged and furious, like a kettle about to blow its lid. And then, he exploded. An absolute storm of shouting, swearing, accusations, all of it pouring into the receiver so hard I had to pull it away from my ear. You ungrateful little brat! After everything we did for you! That truck was my life! How could you do this to your own father? I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I didn't try to explain myself like I had so many times before. I just sat there on my second-hand mattress, staring at the peeling paint on the ceiling, feeling strangely calm. When he finally ran out of steam, or maybe just needed to catch his breath, I said quietly, I paid for that truck for 3 years, Dad. Without thanks. Without even a phone call. You kicked me out. You called me dead weight. So I stopped being dead weight. There was a pause. A real one. Like maybe, for half a second, he understood. And then? Click. He hung up. And just like that, it was over. Or at least I thought it was. The next day, my phone blew up again, but not from him. A text from Megan popped up first, a photo of my mom sitting at the kitchen table, head in her hands, face blotchy and tear-streaked. The caption underneath? Look what you did to Mom. Comments started pouring in from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Selfish. Ungrateful. After all your family did for you? It was laughable, honestly. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew I had paid for their Wi-Fi so Tyler could stream video games. That I had bought Megan a new phone when hers shattered. That I'd skipped lunches and busted my hands at the garage to keep the electricity on at that house. The same house where they treated me like a ghost. They didn't care about the facts. They just needed a villain. And apparently, I was convenient. I stared at the texts for a long time. And then? I powered off my phone, tossed it onto my sagging thrift store couch, and stepped outside. It had started drizzling, the warm, Lazy kind of rain that smells like wet concrete and summer grass. I sat down on the curb, head tilted back, letting the rain wash over me. Not angry. Not bitter. Just tired. Tired of being the scapegoat. Tired of being the one who fixed everything while getting nothing but resentment in return. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Nobody just shows up at my place. I peeked through the peephole. It was my mom. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not just physically, like life had finally started chipping away at that impossible, angry armor she'd always worn. I opened the door just an inch. She looked up at me, eyes red and puffy. "Luke," she said, her voice shaking. "Can we talk?" I stood there, gripping the edge of the door. "Talk about what?" She swallowed hard. Looked down at her hands. "We miss you. Your dad, he's hurting. We all are." I leaned my head against the doorframe, feeling a strange mixture of emotions swirl in my chest. "Because you lost the truck?" I asked. She flinched. "Because you lost your punching bag?" She wiped at her eyes. "It's not fair to say that." I stepped out onto the small landing, pulling the door closed behind me. Neither was kicking me out. We stood there in silence for a long time, the drizzle turning the sidewalk a darker shade of gray. Finally, she said, "We were wrong. But this family is falling apart. We need you back." And maybe, once upon a time, that would have been enough. Maybe I would have dropped everything, sacrificed whatever little happiness I'd scraped together, just to be needed. But not this time. I folded my arms across my chest and said, "You didn't need me when I was paying your bills. You didn't need me when you locked me out. You only need me now because everything's falling apart." Her eyes filled again. She nodded, maybe because she knew I was right, maybe because she didn't have the strength to argue. I took a deep breath, rain trickling down the back of my neck. "I'm not coming back, Mom. I've built something here. It's not much. But it's mine. And I'm not giving it up." She turned and walked back to her car, shoulders hunched like the weight of the world was finally too much to bear. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just closed the door slowly, gently, and locked it. This time, from the inside. The weeks passed. The calls stopped. The guilt faded. My little studio, with its flickering lamp and creaky floorboards, slowly became home. I bought a second-hand bookshelf and started collecting battered novels from thrift stores. I learned to cook more than just ramen. I even got a tiny fern plant that, somehow, I've kept alive longer than I expected. And the motorcycle? The battered Yamaha project in the corner? She runs now. Not perfectly. She still sputters and coughs on cold mornings. But she runs. And sometimes, when the day's been long and the world feels heavy, I ride out past the edge of town, feeling the wind against my face, no destination, no expectations, just freedom. Real freedom. For the first time in my life, I'm not carrying anyone else's weight. I have oil under my fingernails, a mattress that still smells faintly like mothballs, and a fridge that hums louder than it should. But it's mine. All of it. And if you're sitting there right now, wondering if it's worth it to choose yourself? To walk away from the people who only show up when they need something? To build a life that's small, imperfect, and entirely your own? Let me be the one to tell you. It is. Close the door. Turn the bolt. Breathe. Then start building something better, something that's yours. That's exactly what I did. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.